Okay, so as I mentioned before, from Revit to Rhino, we create a little thing that we can't do in Revit. We bring that thing from Rhino to Revit. We assign materials and we're happy about it. And I hope it works because I'm recording. So this is the thing. The first thing that you need to be aware of is that you need to be in the 3D space. So that means in your 3D view, and whatever you see here is what you take to Rhino, okay? So if you want to bring some other things, you might want to turn them on, like the landscape or the grids or whatever it is. I decided to hide those things, those categories, okay? If you don't want some things, you can also hide them before you take them on. But, because we're going to use this only as a scaffolding of another element, I don't think it matters that much. You don't need to select anything. No. You just have to have the view open with the things that you need. File, export, DWG. This is exactly what we did for the plans, but we're not in a plan. So what it's doing is thinking, I guess you want the 3D view, the 3D elements of the view. Before you take it into Rhino, this button is important to be pressed and thought about. These are the layers that you're going to be bringing and the categories. These are types of lines, blah, blah. It doesn't really matter. For me, what matters is number one, the solid options. If you have it under poly mesh, you're going to have a bunch of meshes. So full of triangles, not good, but it's going to be low res in a way. It's a smaller file, and you might be able to work with that for 3D printing in a better way. If you want to work with a file, you need to be in ACIS solids. This one will give you clean surfaces and planes that you can work with in Rhino. Another thing to be aware of is the units. Just don't touch those. I think inches works. But remember that inches is the unit that you're working with. You say, okay, next, give it a name, hello. You don't really need to change much from here. Okay, there's a lot of stuff here, so it might take a little bit. And you're done. In Rhino, I did it before. This is what's going to come, but I'm going to do it again. I'm just going to say new. Actually, no new. I'm going to open. As I mentioned before, DWG files are fantastic because you can literally open them in many software. So I'm going to just say open. Hello. Big question here is this one, which is basically the units. You want to bring it as scale 1:1. So just make sure model units and layout units are both inches, because that's what we understood are the scale of the drawing of the model from Revit. Okay, this one might take a little time as well, depending on how much stuff you have in your Revit file. And I can predict that some complex surfaces might come with problems. But if you're not in the complex world, I don't think there should be any issues. And you'll see in a second what I mean. By the way, before I talked about plans taken from Revit to AutoCAD and therefore to Illustrator. Needless to say is that you can open a plan in DWG in Rhino as well and draft in Rhino if you need to. Okay, here is, and what I was talking about before is, these surfaces are being extended beyond the cut. And maybe it's because they're so complex that Rhino cannot really operate with them. Notice how the cuts are there, but maybe this could be edited one by one, but just gonna delete them for now. Okay, this is the thing, no? Again, you might want to create I'm gonna imagine here a loft element in the middle of a space that is complex enough to be difficult to be modeled in Revit. So, I could claim that Rhino has the solution for that. So what I'm going to do is just go and look at the interior or go to the plan view and think of a space that I might want something there. Like here, for example, a double height space. And, we've been working with this type of simple operations in the first part of the semester. So I don't think it will be a difficult element to consider. I'm going to do a curve. I'm going to do it outside so it doesn't snap, and I'm going to do something, I don't know, funky. I'm going to place it there. It's going to be scaled down, almost like a totem here. Okay. I'm going to go to the 3D, zoom select, and I'm going to do just a totem thing here, copying up the element. And I'm going to just do something with a variation here. Okay. Again, you can do these things however you want them to do and whatever you need to do. It could be a piece of furniture that is a bit specific or very much more organic. It could be something that comes from sub-Ds that allows you to do more organic modeling, as you should know, because we had that assignment in the beginning. Anyway, I'm going to do a loft, just simple enough for me to explain the integration of Revit and Rhino. So the soft allows you to do this type of shapes, as you know, and say, okay, I'm going to cap that so it's a solid. And just for the sake of it, if you have an element that has different materialities, for example, I'm going to do this here. And I'm going to do a mirror of that just for the sake of it. There's a, yin yang, and they have two different materials, okay? A sculpture in the middle. And you obviously need to allocate them wherever you want them to be. So there could be yin is here and yang is there. Okay. And you could also navigate to to that space and see if you like it in terms of proportions or whatever it is. No, I'm just going to take it there. I'm going to take these ones further up because I would like it to be much higher. I'm selecting just the edges of the surface to make simple modifications. Control Shift, as you know, taking it up. I want to take it all the way to the roof. Okay. So wait, you can test the perspective and say, I like this from the bottom. You could say, I also like it, whatever it is that you want to do and test it. Now, you might want to think of materiality. So before you take this to Rhino, you need to assign a specific layer for each of the objects that have a different material. So just as an example, I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to call it something like wood, and I'm going to place that object here. So change object layer, that's going to be like that. I can even give it a color that makes sense for me to later on understand. Okay, and this one is going to be, I don't know, a water material, just to go funky on it. Select, right click, change object layer, and that's going to be a bluish tone, turquoise. Okay, so important, before you take this, just each material set of objects need to be in a different layer. And this is important because otherwise you won't be able to assign materials later on. Okay, then once you have one layer for each material and all of the objects in Rhino in that layer, it's very simple. You select the elements that you want to take to Revit, File, Export Selected. I'm going to call this Hello 2. Save. Go back to Revit. Insert. Import cat. Hello 2. Open. Wireframe to see through it. And there you have your monsters. If you follow the steps as I just explained, they go precisely to the same location that you had them in Rhino. So far so good. I can go to a view to see that in the level 2. Can create a camera. Well, here is. Can create a camera view. And go to realistic and see how these things look. Now, notice that I'm not using the SAT option. I'm using actually the DWG option. The SAT is a great option for selecting surfaces afterwards and applying surfaces or walls to surfaces and so on. Okay. Now there's the issue of, and hopefully this works because I see through this and I shouldn't, but anyway, is the issue of materiality. So when you do this, there's no way for you to select materials. So you can select this and there's no option here for you to select materials. So you can go to the edit types and you won't be able either to do that. So the question would be, how can we assign materials to this? No? So it's going to be under visibility and graphics, VV. You're going to go to object styles. And there's this option called imported objects that you can see the different materials here. It's a little bit of a messy way to do one thing, but it works. Notice that under that DWG, I have the water and the wood, and I can change the color. So I can change the color of that line if I want to. If you want to match the color of the rest of the elements, I can just say okay to that and they turn black, so that's great. But under visiting graphics, you can also change the materiality of how it's going to be rendered. So again, you go to imported objects. Water is going to have a different material here. So you can click on the 3 points and say, I'm going to create a new material. Right click, rename water, whatever. You might use one that exists already. There's already a water one, but I'm going to do just something differently. Apply a blue tone, a little bit of metallic tone here, reflectivity, and transparency. And I'm just going to give a bump for whatever reason. Just, I don't have an image here. No, that's not going to be logical. Anyway, if you have a bump thing here, you can assign it either that way if you have an image, or you can just check on this noise, maybe that will give you some kind of a bump quality to that. You can change the size. These are the presets for the bump, so you can just change those presets here. Anyway, there are a bunch of things you can do. That's one, so that will be the water, and then again, it could be anything you want. The wood could be more conventional, or you can create your own material. Okay. And that would be the way to assign the material quality to that. Okay. I think I'm going to leave it there.